The day my ungrateful daughter and her husband thought they'd struck gold with a $53 million lottery ticket, they sneered at me and said, "We don't need your army pension scraps anymore. Why don't you just disappear?" Their faces drained of color when I chuckled and replied, "Darling, did you even bother to check whose name is on that ticket? If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. I read every comment." Now let me rewind and show you exactly how this little masterpiece of karma unfolded. 3 weeks earlier, on a bitter December morning in Fort Haven, Kansas, I followed the same routine I'd kept every Friday since leaving the service. I walked into Henderson's General Store and bought my single lottery ticket, the same numbers I'd carried with me since 1994. Old habits from the battlefield die hard, and for me, consistency was its own kind of prayer. My name is Colonel Elena Hayes, retired after 25 years in the Army. I'm 62, widowed for nearly a decade, and for the past 2 years, I've been forced to call my daughter Claire's house home. Her husband, Derek, insists I live in their spare room, though real guests aren't usually expected to hand over every cent of their retirement pay for the privilege. "Morning, Colonel Hayes," called young Ethan from behind the counter. He still remembered the days I'd march in with Claire for ice pops after soccer practice. "The usual," I said, sliding a crisp 5 across the counter. He printed out the ticket and I traced the numbers as if they were old friends. 7 for the day I earned my first promotion. 14 for Claire's birthday. 23 for the unit I commanded overseas. 31 for the house number where I raised my family. 45 for the years I spent fighting for respect. And Powerball 18. The age Claire was when I saluted her as she graduated high school, proud and ready for her future. "Wish me luck, Ethan," I said, slipping the ticket into my weathered leather wallet. "You deserve it, ma'am," he replied. "One of these days it's gonna hit." If only he knew how right he was. On the walk back, I passed the house where I'd raised Claire with her father. The new owners had painted it pale green. He would have hated it. Always said white with black shutters made a house look disciplined, like a place built on values. The cruel twist? I was now living with the very child I'd raised in that house, and she treated me like excess baggage. When I turned up the driveway, Derek's shiny Lexus gleamed in the sun, a reminder of the life they were living while leeching off my sacrifices. Through the kitchen window, I caught Claire waving her hands dramatically on a phone call, probably griping to her sister about having to share her home with her washed-up Army mom. I slipped through the back door and hung my coat on the hook near the laundry room, the same hook where her father once hung his uniform, where Claire once hung her school bag. Places where things belonged. "Mom, that you?" Claire's voice carried that sharp edge of irritation I'd grown used to. "It's me," I called back, biting my tongue against the words I really wanted to say. "Sorry for existing in your perfect little life. But years in the military taught me that sometimes survival means silence, holding your ground without firing a shot. Even if your dignity feels like it's being stripped away one day at a time." The day my husband Daniel passed was the day the ground shifted beneath my feet, though I didn't recognize it right away. Grief clouds your vision. It makes you slow to notice the predators circling, especially when one of them shares your blood. Daniel's funeral was held on a bitter Tuesday in December of 2022. 40 years of marriage, service, and sacrifice were reduced to a stiff ceremony and a catered spread of sandwiches. My daughter, Claire, spoke kindly of her father, painting him as the devoted soldier and family man he truly was. Her husband, Derek, stood beside her, dabbing his eyes at carefully chosen intervals. I knew those tears weren't for Daniel. Derek only cried when his investments dipped or his luxury car got scratched. "Mom, you can't stay in that big house by yourself," Claire said as she drove us back from the cemetery. I stared out at the frozen fields rolling by, remembering how Daniel used to grip my hand on this same route when we were young. He'd talk about the home we'd buy, the family we'd raise, the life we'd build together. Never once did he say practical. "I've been managing just fine for 62 years, I replied, my voice steady. From the front seat, Derek cut in, his tone dripping with concern. "At your age, Colonel, that house is a hazard. The snow, the lawn care, it's risky. What if you fall and no one's there?" His words almost sounded caring. "Almost. Besides," Claire added smoothly, "we've got plenty of room. The guest bedroom hardly ever gets used. You could even help out with the kids when they're around." That line should have been my first warning. Their house was a sprawling colonial in the new development across town. 3-car garage, granite counters, a staircase built to impress. They'd stretched themselves thin buying it, though they dressed it up as a smart investment. My house, by contrast, had been paid off for years. Every brick and beam secured by Daniel's service checks and my own decades of careful saving. The guest room they offered me was cozy enough. Soft yellow walls, polished white furniture, and a view of their perfectly landscaped yard. "It'll feel like a nice hotel," Claire promised, fluffing the pillows. "Your own space but with family nearby." The first month I convinced myself it wasn't so bad. I cooked meals, folded laundry, kept the place in order. I stayed out of their way when they wanted privacy. They seemed grateful, though I noticed they never spent a dime on groceries or utilities. My pension check conveniently disappeared into what Claire called household support. By month 2 the favors started. "Mom, can you watch the kids this weekend? Derek and I need time to ourselves." "Colonel, you're already heading to the store. Could you swing by for the dry cleaning? Could you let the repairman in? We'll both be at work." One request blurred into another until it became obvious. I wasn't family. I was unpaid staff. Still, I told myself it was temporary. Just until the grief dulled. Just until I found my footing again. I should have remembered Daniel's voice in my head. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. By summer the mask was slipping. Claire's requests turned into commands, and Derek was suddenly never around when conflict flared. One morning over coffee, Claire sat me down like a commanding officer about to issue orders. Papers spread across the table, neat columns and numbers highlighted. "Mom, we need to formalize your financial contribution," she announced smoothly. My stomach sank. "What kind of contribution?" I asked, though I already knew. "Living expenses," she said, her tone brisk. "Utilities, food, maintenance. It's only fair you pay your share." She slid the paper across. $800 for the guest room. $200 for utilities. $300 for groceries. $1,300 in total. Exactly $50 shy of my pension. "This seems high," I said carefully. "I'm just one person and I'm out of the house several hours every day volunteering at the Veterans Center." "But you still use the kitchen, the bathroom, the laundry," Claire countered. "And when the kids are here you're with them full time. That adds to expenses." Her kids, my grandkids from her first marriage, visited every other weekend. I adored every second with them. And now even that love was being tallied up, itemized and weaponized against me. They were only 8 and 10, all wild energy and endless curiosity. The kind of kids who reminded me why family was supposed to be worth all the sacrifice. But Derek's wife, Claire, never saw them that way. One afternoon I overheard her on the phone, her voice sharp as glass while I folded laundry in the next room. "It's exhausting having kids underfoot every other weekend. And with Mom here too? Feels like I'm running a boarding house." That stung worse than a battlefield wound. Still, I signed their so-called financial agreement because what choice did I have? At 63, with only scraps of my pension left after their deductions, finding an apartment wasn't realistic. Derek at least pretended to care, telling me, "This is just until we figure out something long-term, Mom." But long-term turned into me fading deeper into the background while carrying the weight of their household. By fall I was doing nearly everything, stocking groceries, scrubbing floors, cooking every meal. When Claire's kids came, I became their full-time caretaker while she and Derek wined and dined across town. When Claire invited her friends over, I was expected to play hostess until it was time to vanish upstairs like a ghost. The breaking point came in November during one of her dinner parties. I'd spent hours preparing food, polishing the house and smiling until my jaw hurt. As I cleared empty glasses, I caught Claire laughing with one of her friends. "It's perfect," she boasted. "She handles the chores, watches the kids, and her pension practically covers our bills. It's like having live-in staff, except she pays us for the privilege." Her friend roared with laughter. "You should write a guidebook, How to Profit Off Your Mother-in-Law." Standing there, balancing a tray of dirty glasses, I felt something lock into place inside me. This wasn't temporary help, wasn't family loyalty. This was exploitation, pure and simple. But I didn't explode that night. I finished cleaning, retreated to the little room upstairs and reminded myself that I still had one weekly ritual no one could take. My lottery ticket. And sometimes, life has its own way of correcting the battlefield balance. Then came December. A snowstorm howled across town, and Claire gathered us around the dining table like a general briefing her troops. Blueprints spread wide, she smiled that thin smile of hers. We've decided to convert the basement into a suite for you, Colonel. Private kitchen, separate entrance. It'll be almost like your own apartment. The basement. They were moving me underground like excess storage. Derek shifted uneasily but still nodded along. It'll be ready by spring, Mom. You'll have independence and it'll free up space upstairs. I asked, my voice flat. And what if I don't want the basement? Claire's smile never reached her eyes. Well, we've talked about that too. We need more space as a couple. The basement gives you independence while keeping you nearby. If you'd prefer another arrangement, we'd understand. Another arrangement. At my age, with barely $50 left over each month, that meant a government-run senior building with a 2-year wait list, or some dingy flat in the roughest part of town. They knew it. They had me cornered. That Friday I bundled into my old boots and walked to the corner shop through thickening snow. Each icy step felt dangerous, but I wasn't afraid of danger anymore. My whole life had become one long battlefield. Rough weather for walking, Colonel, Jimmy called from behind the counter as I pushed open the store's door, shaking snow from my shoulders. I've marched through worse than this, I muttered as I shook the snow from my coat and handed Jimmy my $5. Same numbers as always. As he printed the ticket, I thought about those digits differently this time. 7. The day I graduated from boot camp, when I first wore the uniform that defined my life. 14. The day my daughter Sophia was born, when I swore she'd grow up knowing her mother could fight for anything. 23. The day I was deployed overseas, saying goodbye to everything familiar for an uncertain future. 31. The day I came home alive, medals on my chest but scars no one could see. 45. The years I'd lived with discipline, sacrifice, and unbreakable resilience. And 18. Sophia's age when she left for college, proud and independent because I'd taught her strength. Those numbers weren't just luck. They were my life's battlefield etched in ink. I tucked the ticket behind my old military ID, its edges worn from years in my wallet. Cross your fingers, Colonel, Jimmy grinned. Always, I replied. On my way back, I passed kids sledding down the school hill, shrieking with laughter. Pure joy, untouched by betrayal or greed. Watching them reminded me of Sophia at that age, building snow forts and refusing to come inside even with her hands blue from cold. When did my own blood turn so cold? When had Derek become the kind of man who could look his mother in the eyes and insist moving her into a basement was for her own good? When I got back, Claire was in the kitchen, phone to her ear. Yes, the cheapest options. No need for upgrades, it's just for one elderly person, she said with a chuckle. Just for one elderly person. Not Commander Elaine Carter, who'd led units overseas, buried her husband, raised a daughter, and survived battles most people couldn't imagine. No. In their house, I was reduced to a liability, a problem to manage cheaply. I went upstairs to the little room they allowed me, staring out at the snowfall while the lottery ticket rested quietly in my purse. 32 years of the same ritual. And now those numbers carried a weight I couldn't ignore. Justice doesn't always march in quickly, but when it arrives with precision. That Friday night, the announcement came on during the late news. I was propped up in bed, reading a book about a woman who uncovered hidden family secrets, when the anchor's cheery voice caught my ear. Tonight's Powerball jackpot is $53 million. Winning numbers: 7, 23, 31, 45. And Powerball 18. My mind froze. Those were my numbers. I rewound the DVR, listened again. My hands shook as I dug the ticket from my wallet. There it was in black and white. My numbers. My win. $53 million. For a second, instinct told me to rush downstairs, share the miracle, celebrate with Derek and Claire. Then reality snapped back. I was in their house, paying them rent from my pension, treated like a live-in maid, scheduled to be shipped to the basement because I was inconvenient. Why should I give them anything? Not even the satisfaction of knowing. I slid the ticket back into my wallet and lay awake all night, staring into the dark. By dawn I had a plan. Saturday morning came with its usual chaos. The grandkids were in the living room, still in pajamas, bickering over cartoons. Claire breezed through in her yoga clothes. I'm off to yoga, then nails. Can you keep an eye on them? Of course, I answered like always. Derek buried himself in work emails before golf. And that's when Claire, in her tidy-up frenzy, Decided to dig through my purse for coupons I'd clipped earlier in the week. Elaine, where did you stash those cereal coupons? Claire's voice rang from the kitchen as I was refereeing the grandkids' tug-of-war over the TV remote. Check the side pocket, I called back, not looking up. Found them. And wait, what's this? Something in her tone made me turn. She was holding my lottery ticket like it was a live grenade, her face pale. You bought a ticket? She stammered. Kept my voice even. I buy one every week. Same numbers. Been at it for over 30 years. Claire's hands trembled as she fumbled for her phone. Derek, she shrieked. Come here, now. He came jogging from his office, golf shirt half-tucked, hair sticking up. What happened? Kid's okay. The ticket. Claire shoved it at him, her phone already pulled up to the winning numbers. Look at this. Look at last night's draw. Derek scanned the ticket, then the screen. His face froze. This can't be real. He checked again. And again. It's real. Oh my God, it's real. The kitchen went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, until little Emma piped up. Are we rich now? Claire scooped her up and twirled. We're rich, baby. We'll never worry about money again. I sat at the table watching it all like a soldier watching chaos unravel on a battlefield. Claire dialing every contact she had. 53 million. Yes, million. Derek muttering over and over. It's real. It's actually real. The kids wide-eyed, soaking in the buzz. I thought of Robert, my late husband, steady, cautious, always warning me never to count victory until the mission was complete. He'd laugh at this circus, remind me of chickens and hatching. Mom, Derek finally said, gripping the ticket like a classified document. We need to call a lawyer. A tax advisor. Maybe even upgrade the basement project. Upgrade the basement? I asked dryly. Claire's eyes lit up. Of course. With this kind of money, why settle for cheap finishes? Or better, why not a bigger house with a proper in-law suite? Or, one of those luxury senior communities. Activities, medical staff, all the bells and whistles. You'd love it. Their lottery plan wasn't freedom for me. It was a polished exit strategy. A gilded way to shuffle me out of sight. Derek nodded eagerly. That's actually a great idea, Mom. You'd be happier around people your age. And now we can afford it. They were already mapping out my future. With my winnings. With my numbers. I let them talk, their voices bubbling with excitement until the timing felt right. Then I spoke softly, firmly. There's just one detail you're overlooking. They both turned expectant. The ticket, I said, holding out my hand. Derek hesitated, then slowly placed it back in my palm. This ticket is in my name, I continued. I bought it. With my money. With the numbers I've carried for 32 years. Which means, I looked them both dead in the eye. This isn't our win. It's mine. Claire's face went from red to white to green in seconds, like she was seasick on dry land. But you live here. We're family, Derek insisted, his voice thin and strained. That kind of money, it changes everything for all of us. I rose from the table, straighter than I had in years, feeling a surge of dignity I thought they'd stripped from me long ago. No, I said evenly. It changes everything for me. The look on their faces, realization dawning that their live-in maid, their unpaid babysitter, their so-called tenant, was suddenly the one holding $53 million in her back pocket. That image alone could have kept me warm for years. Mom, Derek tried again, slow and cautious as though talking to a volatile bomb. Yes, technically the ticket's in your name, but we're family. Families share. Families support each other. I almost laughed. Support each other? Like when I supported you with my entire pension check every month. Or when you supported me by planning to stick me in the basement. Claire's eyes darted as though she was running calculations. Her voice softened into that practiced client service tone she used at work. Elaine, sweetie. I think maybe we've had a misunderstanding about your contributions. That money you gave us every month? That wasn't rent. That was just your fair share of household expenses. We've never thought of you as a tenant. I slid the ticket carefully back into my wallet and snapped it shut. Perfect. Then you won't mind if I stop making those contributions immediately. Since I'm not a tenant, just family. Derek's hands came up in a calming gesture. Let's all just breathe. This is life-changing. We need to think about the implications carefully. Oh, I've been thinking, I said, since about 11 o'clock last night when those numbers came up on Channel 7. And I've reached some very clear conclusions. Claire's professional smile cracked. What kind of conclusions? That $53 million is more than enough for me to live comfortably, without ever depending on anyone else for a roof over my head. The color drained from her face. You're not serious. You wouldn't just leave. Not after everything we've done for you. Everything they'd done for me. Like turning me into their housekeeper. Like charging me for a guest room and planning to relegate me to the basement. Like mocking my presence to their friends. I'm very serious, I said. Tomorrow morning I'll call the lottery office to claim my prize. Then I'll be shopping for a place of my own. Derek raked his hands through his hair, panic leaking through. Mom, this is too much. You can't handle that kind of money alone. You'll need help. Guidance. From us. I looked at him, really looked, and saw not my boy but a stranger. When did you decide I was too incompetent to manage my own life, Derek? When did being my son give you the right to control my choices? They froze when I added softly, do you know what your father asked me on his deathbed? He made me promise never to let anyone take advantage of my kindness. He said people would try, especially family. He was right. Claire cleared her throat, voice brittle. Elaine, you're overreacting. This is just a miscommunication. Is it? I reached into my purse and pulled out a small notebook. Let's talk numbers. In the past year I've paid you $15,600 in so-called household expenses. I've provided over 1,000 hours of free child care. 800 loads of laundry. 300 meals. And I've scrubbed this house top to bottom week after week. Claire's face flushed crimson. And in return? I continued. A room you planned to shove into the basement and the humiliation of hearing my situation treated like dinner party entertainment. That's not fair, Derek snapped. We gave you a home. No, I corrected, my voice like steel. You gave me a bed in exchange for labor and money that far exceeded anything you provided me. That isn't generosity, son. That's exploitation. The word landed like a grenade. And now, I said, standing taller than I had in years, I finally have the means to explore other options. By Sunday morning, Claire was in full crisis management mode. She must have stayed up all night scheming because when I walked into the kitchen the next morning, Claire was waiting with a thick 3-ring binder and a look that screamed presentation mode. I've done some research, she announced brightly, flipping the binder open to pages of highlighted articles. Did you know 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt within 5 years? I poured myself coffee and leaned back in my chair, letting her performance play out. Is that so? Absolutely, she said, tapping at the pages. They make poor financial choices, get conned by bad advisors, or worst of all, let family members bleed them dry. It's heartbreaking, really. That's why you need proper guidance. Family guidance. Derek appeared in the doorway, looking rumpled and tense, like he'd spent the night pacing. Mom, Claire's right. 53 million is no joke. Nobody handles that alone, especially not at your age. Claire jumped in smoothly. No offense, Elaine, but managing this kind of money requires estate planning, tax strategy, diversified investments. It's complicated. I studied the two of them for a long moment. They'd clearly rehearsed this tag team intervention, thinking I'd crumble under their well-researched concern. You've both thought this through carefully, I said. We just don't want you making mistakes that could ruin your security, Derek said quickly. What kind of mistakes? I asked. Claire leaned forward like a shark scenting blood. Well, say you bought a house without understanding property taxes. Or blew money on the wrong investments. Or, she hesitated only briefly, trusted the wrong people with your money. The wrong people, I repeated. Like who? Advisors who charge high fees. Managers who push risky schemes. Or, she paused, family members who might take advantage. The irony nearly made me choke on my coffee. I set the mug down with deliberate care. Claire, let me ask you, when I moved in here, did you bother researching the cost of assisted living in this area? Her eyes flickered just for a second. I don't know what you mean. I mean, I said, my voice steady, did you look up what it would actually cost me to live somewhere else so you could set my so-called rent competitively? Derek shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we never thought of it that way. Because I did some research myself. A private room at a reputable assisted living facility runs about $1,800 a month. That includes meals, activities, cleaning, and medical support. You've been charging me $1,300 for a guest room while I cook, clean, and babysit. That isn't family helping family. That's a business arrangement, and a lousy one at that. Marcus looked stunned. But this is a nice house. With no privacy, no independence, and landlords who treat me like the help, I cut in. I snapped Claire's binder shut and slid it back across the table. I appreciate your worry about lottery winners going broke. But I think you're worried about the wrong person making poor financial decisions. Her mask of professionalism cracked, her cheeks flushing. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said coolly, that I've been subsidizing your lifestyle to the tune of 20 grand this past year while you two took vacations and bought new furniture. And now I have other options. I stood up. So if you'll excuse me, I have a lawyer to call. The flash of panic that crossed both their faces was worth every bitter year I'd spent in that house. By Monday, word of my win had spread through town like wildfire. Jimmy Murphy must have connected the dots, because by noon 3 news vans were parked outside Derek and Claire's house. From my upstairs window, I watched Claire greet the reporters like a politician's wife, hair perfect, smile gleaming. Elaine's resting, but as her family, we're just so excited for this blessing in all our lives. All our lives. He loved that phrase. My phone, meanwhile, wouldn't stop buzzing. Old coworkers, neighbors, even my distant cousin from Minnesota, all wanting to know what I planned to do with the money. What I planned was to meet my attorney, David Richardson, at 2 o'clock sharp. But when I came downstairs with my purse and keys, Claire blocked the door. Elaine, you can't leave right now. There are reporters everywhere. They'll mob you. I have an appointment, I replied calmly. Can't it wait? Just until the media dies down. Claire and Derek flanked me at the doorway like overzealous security guards. Mom, be reasonable, Derek urged. You're not equipped for this kind of media frenzy. Let us help you navigate. There was again. Navigate. Another polished corporate buzzword. I'd spent decades navigating deployments, raising kids alone while Harold was overseas, surviving losses these two couldn't fathom. I didn't need help navigating a walk to my car. I've been steering my own life for 67 years, I said evenly. I think I can manage a few reporters. But when I swung the door open, I understood their sudden urgency. The yard was packed. Reporters, cameras, microphones, the works. The second they spotted me, the crowd surged like a wave. Mrs. Grant, how does it feel to win $53 million? What will you do with the money? Is it true you've played the same numbers for decades? For a heartbeat, I considered turning back. I could feel Derek and Claire silently begging me to retreat, to let them run interference. But I straightened my back, squared my shoulders the way I had at every military ceremony, and stepped down into the chaos with dignity. I'm very grateful for this blessing, I told the reporters. As for my plans, I'll be using this to live independently, for the first time in years. What do you mean by that, Mrs. Grant? I turned, glancing back at the doorway where Claire and Derek hovered, and something inside me settled. A clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. I mean, sometimes the people you trust most mistake kindness for weakness. And sometimes life gives you the tools to correct that mistake. The reporters pressed closer, sensing blood in the water. Are you saying your family was taking advantage of you? I looked straight into the nearest camera, thinking about all the other seniors watching who might be in my shoes. I'm saying family should mean respect, not exploitation. And it's never too late to stand up for yourself, no matter your age. The questions kept flying, but I'd said enough. I slipped into my car, leaving Derek and Claire to squirm under the spotlight. In the mirror, I saw Claire already gesturing wildly, trying to spin the story. But the truth was out now, being broadcast across half the state, and there was no stuffing it back in the bottle. David Richardson's law office felt like sanctuary after the storm. At 75, he was calm, deliberate, the kind of man who'd spent 40 years untangling the worst of people's financial messes. Elaine, he said warmly, rising to shake my hand. Congratulations. Harold would have been proud. Thank you, I said, settling into the same leather chair Harold and I had once occupied, hashing out wills and survivor benefits. I saw your interview, David said, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Bold. Wasn't too much. Not at all, I replied. Sometimes plain truth is the only way forward. He nodded, flipping open a file. Now let's protect what's yours. Have you claimed the prize yet? Not yet. I'm driving to Des Moines tomorrow. Good. I'd recommend the annuity for tax stability. We'll set up trusts, maybe even a foundation if you want to direct some of this toward causes you believe in. The point is, you'll be in control. For the next hour we worked through strategies. Tax implications, estate protections, safeguarding assets. David never once spoke down to me, never once hinted I was incapable of making decisions. He explained, I asked questions, and together we mapped a future that was mine alone. And then, as we turned to housing options, David closed the file and looked at me differently. Elaine, there's something Harold asked me to keep confidential. I swore I'd only tell you if certain circumstances came about. A chill rippled through me. What circumstances? David slid a thicker file across the polished desk, his eyes steady on mine. Elaine, he said, voice low but deliberate. Harold saw this coming. He understood Derek and Claire's habits far better than you realized. My breath caught. What do you mean? He knew they were living beyond their means. 6 months before his death, he quietly hired a private investigator. He wanted to be certain you wouldn't be cornered later. The room tilted slightly, my stomach tightening as I flipped through the papers. Page after page, credit card balances, overdue car notes, a mortgage teetering on the edge. Debt stacked like sandbags before a flood. David's tone softened. He wanted you to have this evidence if you ever needed to defend yourself. And there's more. He also left behind an insurance policy. My head jerked up. Insurance? Harold never told me. $500,000, David confirmed. Deposited directly into a trust in your name. It's been growing quietly for 2 years. He wanted to make sure you had reserves if Derek and Claire ever turned into a problem. I pressed my hand against the folder, heart pounding. He knew, I whispered. He knew exactly what would happen. He loved you enough to prepare, David said gently. For a long moment I saw Harold as he'd been in those final weeks, frail but sharp-eyed. Not just fighting cancer but fighting for me even after he was gone. I drew in a slow breath, resolve hardening in my chest. David, I want a family meeting. Tonight. I want them to see these numbers. I want them to understand exactly what their situation looks like, and exactly what I know. Elaine, David cautioned, once this comes out there's no return to normal. There hasn't been normal for 2 years, I said firmly, standing tall. They've bled me dry, treated me like a tenant, like a servant. Harold tried to shield me from this day. Now it's here and I'm not hiding anymore. It's time they learned what happens when they underestimate a Grant woman. The flicker of pride in David's eyes told me everything. Harold would be proud to. We set the time, 7 p.m. I spent the afternoon preparing, spreadsheets neatly labeled, debt reports organized, every page marked with color-coded tabs. I rehearsed each point until my words were as sharp as the edge of a saber. Derek and Claire thought they were coming to smooth over my emotional outburst with the reporters, to tighten their grip on my future. Instead, they were walking into a tribunal. Claire breezed in first, armed with a laptop and a binder thick with articles about bankrupt lottery winners. She spread her materials across the coffee table like a corporate consultant ready to pitch. Derek followed, carrying a bottle of wine and the same forced smile he used whenever he wanted me pliable. Mom, Derek began gently as they settled in, about what you told those reporters earlier. We get it, you were overwhelmed. I wasn't overwhelmed, I cut in coolly, sliding the first folder onto the table. I was finally telling the truth. Claire clicked her laptop open, her professional mask perfectly intact. Elaine, she said crisply, let's be practical. Elaine folded her hands on the binder Claire had set out, then quietly slid her own folder across the table. Before we talk about my financial future, she said evenly, we need to talk about yours. Derek frowned as he looked down, his face draining of color. Claire leaned forward, her professional mask slipping. What is this? It's a full financial profile, Elaine replied, her voice steady. Compiled by a private investigator your father hired before he passed. He wanted to be sure I'd know the truth if I ever needed to defend myself. The room went still. Derek's hands hovered above the papers like they might burn him. Elaine continued, each word deliberate. You're sitting on $47,000 in credit card debt across 6 cards. Your mortgage is underwater by 32 grand. You've got 2 car loans totaling 18,000. And Claire, your boutique has been bleeding money for 8 months straight. Claire's voice cracked. You had no right. This is an invasion of privacy. Funny, Elaine said softly, that you'd call it that. You didn't think twice about invading mine, deciding I was too incompetent to manage the lottery winnings I earned with my own ticket. You've been siphoning my pension and survivor benefits for 2 years to patch your debts, all while parading me around as a dependent. A burden. Derek tried to recover, his words tripping over themselves. Mom, everyone has setbacks. Everyone struggles with bills. Not everyone, Elaine cut in, charges their widowed mother over $1,000 a month to live as an unpaid servant while planning to move her into a basement. She dropped another document onto the pile. Here's a cost analysis. You've been overcharging me by about $600 a month while wringing another $1,500 in free labor out of me. Cooking, cleaning, childcare. That's more than $25,000 a year. $50,000 in 2 years. Stolen from your own mother. Claire's tears came then, but Elaine recognized them. Tears of exposure, not remorse. We never meant, Derek began, but Elaine's voice cut him off, sharp as a blade. Your father saw this coming. He didn't just worry, he prepared. He left a trust in my name, $500,000 plus interest. He gave David Richardson orders to monitor your finances, to step in if he tried to exploit me. Harold hoped he was wrong about you. Hoped you'd prove him wrong. But here we are. Elaine rose, slipping the last document back into her purse. Her spine straightened with a discipline honed over decades of service. You didn't treat me like family, she said coldly. You treated me like an investment to be milked dry. But that ends tonight. Where are you going? Claire's voice trembled. To start my new life. Elaine's eyes held theirs without flinching. I've already signed for an apartment at Meadowbrook Senior Community. 2 bedrooms, my own kitchen, covered parking. And it costs less than the rent you've been bleeding me for. She reached the door, pausing only once to deliver the final blow. Oh, and since my contributions are finished, you'll need to figure out how to manage that 47 grand in credit card debt without me. I hear financial stress can be brutal on marriages. Then she stepped out into the night, leaving Derek and Claire in their silence. Behind her, she could hear Claire sobbing and Derek muttering in desperation, but it no longer mattered. Elaine had $53 million, a husband who'd loved her enough to defend her from the grave, and the freedom to live the rest of her life on her own terms. Harold's words echoed in her mind. Justice delayed isn't justice denied. It's justice with perfect timing. And he'd been right.